And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce my guest, Jonathan Doubilet, who is the VP of Business Operations for Playtech in the US. Jonathan, how are you doing?
Rather well this morning, thanks, Jake. A bit cold here, -5 at the moment, but hope you have better weather over there.
Yeah, where are you joining us from?
I'm based here in New York. Actually, specifically, I'm in Brooklyn, but our HQ is in Manhattan right now.
Yeah, -5, that sounds horrible to me. It's a bit milder here. No wonder you've got the heating on full blast. Listen, thanks a lot for joining me. Obviously, I just told the viewers who you are, but do you want to give yourself, a little overview of what your job is at Playtech?
Yeah, sure. So I've been with the company for near on a decade, basically not doing the same thing the entire time. I started off in product management way back when, specifically on the sports betting side of things. And Playtech has grown, went from stride to stride since then. Started off bread and butter being, online casino, or iGaming actually, as it would be called here in the US. So sports betting was a new thing. Throughout the years, I've gone on and leveraged my background in finance to basically jump from positions such as corporate development director of some of our newly acquired companies in the sports betting realm over in Europe, amongst them Obenga in Sweden, Geniety in the UK, and others such as Best Gaming Technology in Austria. I've always been, aligned with the iGaming side of things, and even jumping back and forth throughout the years. I've been in the U.S. now for 2 years in my current capacity. Basically, Playtech only really started here in 2020, which is a little bit, late as some would say, but from my perspective, it's given us a good advantage in terms of seeing where the failings of others have occurred, and given us clear-cut opportunities as to where real revenue can be generated.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's what we're hoping to talk about today. Our session is particularly going to focus on iGaming in the US. And, I think most people are probably clued up to some degree about online sports betting in the States just because of the amount of hype. But I think the iGaming sort of online casino situation is maybe less clear. Could you perhaps start with like a deep dive on the current state of play regarding the US iGaming regulation?
Sure. I mean, it's definitely not clear-cut compared to other countries, and I'll ask anybody who is read up on the subject to forgive me, but I'll go over a brief kind of lay of the land to show viewers where we are today. So iGaming started here in its infancy in a legalized manner in 2013. That was actually about 7 years after what was called the UEGA, or the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act, came into play back in 2006. And that was a day in which all, what we'd call them today, gray market operators were officially banned from doing business here in the internet gaming space.
Shut down.
Everybody pulled out. Yeah, everybody pulled out at that time. I shouldn't say everybody, but Playtech and several others, most of the industry pulled out at that time, abiding by local laws, and nobody wanted to get on the bad side of U.S. authorities. So that was kind of the status quo for some time, and I won't get into sports betting at the moment. But the first foray into iGaming, real iGaming as we know it, online casino, online poker, etc., that was actually in 2013. New Jersey passed a set of laws which made that legal. And for many years, New Jersey was the, I would say, iGaming mecca of the United States, but it was the only iGaming, only state where it was actually legal. So what we saw that year was a number of European operators come about, a number of land-based, operators here that have brick and mortar establishments across the United States. It should be mentioned that until the 70s and 80s, most land-based gaming was taking place in Nevada. Strictly in Nevada. I mean, Yeah, exactly. But the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act of 1988 saw a lot of tribes all over the state start launching brick and mortar casinos of their own. And you saw a lot more commercial activity as well in the 80s. Actually, it was only in 2004, it was rather late, that even Pennsylvania opened its first brick and mortar casino. So outside of Atlantic City and Nevada, there really wasn't very much until the 80s, 90s. Now, fast forward a few years, and back to the point of my story here, is that, New Jersey in 2013 launched, but there was no sports betting at the time. A lot of what people have come to know as PASPA, or the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, that prevented anybody outside of a certain few key states, which I won't get into right now. But outside of these key states, nobody could actually offer legalized sports betting, particularly mobile sports betting. That all changed with the repeal of PASPA in 2018. And probably just to give an idea of what's occurred since then. So since 2018, the repeal, there have been about 31 states actually, as of my counting today, 31 states that have legalized sports betting in one way or another. And if you look at that from a chronological point of view, that's about 8 states per year since it was legalized.
Yeah.
Whereas when you look at iGaming and online casinos, as a lot would term them, there have been about 5 states legalized since the repeal of PASPA. Okay. And that averages to about less than 1 a year. So compare that, 8 per year sports betting, less than 1 per year for iGaming, and we're on a slow upward trajectory for iGaming. In fact, sports betting, it's estimated that about 46 states, or about 98% of the addressable U.S. population, will be able to sports bet in one way or another by 2026, with only 7 states at present, and many of those having a limited capacity in terms of competition due to monopolies or other reasons. I don't see this type of trajectory for iGaming, albeit I think that 1 state per year will continue for a little while and could rise exponentially if certain key states tip the needle and cross that barrier.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, and the regulation is proving trickier to get over the line than it is with online sports betting, it seems. So that was a great concise history of what's happened in the US in terms of iGaming. But fast forwarding to right now, the situation as it stands, which states provide the biggest opportunity from an iGaming perspective, kind of both for Playtech and for your operator clients? And perhaps we could start with those that already are regulated, and then move on to ones which might potentially change the game should they regulate in the future.
Yeah, sure thing. So just as of today, I mentioned 7 states. Now, 4 of those offer unfettered type of competition and product ranges that I would consider akin to a European state-sanctioned iGaming infrastructure. I would nail those down to Michigan, West Virginia, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Those 4 states basically offer casino, poker, bingo, anything that I shouldn't say anything, but most forms of popular
the full iGaming product portfolio, so to speak.
Correct. You've got 2 monopoly states, or oligopoly in the case of Connecticut. So Delaware is one which is considered a monopoly run by the lottery. Rather small state, Connecticut, not a sizable state, high GDP. But there are only 2 licenses that have been awarded, and those have gone to the 2 dominant tribes there, which have partnered respectively with DraftKings and FanDuel. If we look at today and the outlook for the next few years, so I mean, right now, at present, there are 13 states with iGaming bills tabled, and those have a low degree of momentum behind them. I do not expect, in this session at least, that any of them will get anything passed. The most likely amongst them seem to have been Indiana, but there was a deadline set for February 1st, where some consensus was needed in order for bills to progress. The session is now ended effectively ended. So we're going to have to wait until the next session to start before we see any type of momentum again.
Yeah.
Even in the next session, it's a short session, and I don't expect there to be anything passed in that time. Now, mind you, you have seen some rumors, or not rumors, but actually talk of bills in states such as New York, right, where sports betting was just launched and to a massive degree of success. I think that's going to be a catalyst for many states when it comes to sports betting, particularly. They've surpassed any other state since launching. And I do expect that, even with the high tax rate, to be quite successful, even though the incumbents they're challenging that tax rate. But every state is going to look at that, the amount of taxation or tax revenue that's been generated, and look to copy that. Now, how that translates to iGaming, I'm looking at the Midwest right now. The New York iGaming bill is going to pass. Senator Adabo in New York State has gone on record to say that he's not considering that to be too promising at present.
It's not going to happen anytime soon, I don't think.
No. You never know. You could be surprised. I would say New York is a wild card state. Nobody expected that to happen, but I think that the success of sports betting just made it kind of a thought that crossed people's minds. But let's look to the Midwest. These are often progressive states. They're amongst the first that adopted online sports betting when it was legalized. Other than New Jersey and Pennsylvania, you have states like Indiana, Iowa, Illinois, even Ohio coming up with sports betting, Kansas, Kentucky. These are all states which I do think, and I know that a number of them have had commissions studied over the past few years as to the effectiveness of iGaming, legalizing iGaming, and what consequences that would have for their economies and also social welfare systems.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting, and every scenario has to be taken into account by legislators on a state-by-state basis, obviously. What are some of the kind of barriers to entry at the moment regarding that expansion of iGaming throughout the US? Is it political opposition? Is it purely the cost of expansion? I mean, do you have a view on that?
So, if we just take a step back and don't talk about legislative efforts and any of the laws so much as you look at the ecosystem for, let's just say, the states that are up and running today. What are the barriers to entry for any operator or supplier, for that matter, who wants to enter? There are a number, and I've seen left and right different European operators and otherwise, foreign operators try and come in, as well as local operators, where they've wished to establish themselves in states like New Jersey, where you have online sports betting and iGaming. One of the first things to take into account, which is different from most states overseas, is the Wire Act, the Federal Wire Act, which essentially prevents sports betting transactions, and actually it's been extended under certain interpretations to online casino transactions, although that can be disputed. But from those crossing state lines, what that means is that any prospective operator who wants to operate here has to have a separate tech stack, i.e. servers, transactional servers, installed on a state-by-state basis. So you want to operate in more than one state, you want to get into New Jersey, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and so on. Let's just start with those three. You need 3 sets of iGaming servers, 3 sets of sports betting servers, and everything, the PAM to underpin that. That can become a costly affair. Let's forget for a second that you just have that on tap. If we go to the supplier side of things, the CapEx becomes even more monumental. Us, for example, in the live dealer vertical, the Wire Act and the consequences of what I just described have actually resulted in an ecosystem where if you want to offer live dealer gaming in a majority of the states where iGaming is legal today, you have to actually fund and build casinos in state. So when we talk about New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, you're talking about major investment in not only the construction of the studio with all of its surrounding technologies, but also the staffing of the casino or of the live dealer studio. So that's a major barrier for entry for most suppliers in that vertical. The only exception to what I just said would be West Virginia, which is considering reciprocal relations with Pennsylvania. where
Okay.
they would allow for streams from Pennsylvania to be beamed into West Virginia for live dealer online gambling purposes.
Yeah, and there's obviously only really a handful or less than a handful of live suppliers sort of operational and active in the US as we speak. And I think, you touched on a pertinent point. If you need to build a studio in every single state that you want to service, it's hardly like in Europe when, you can have a state in Riga or in Georgia or in Latvia and sort of reach a huge population just from one building with one set of costs. It's a completely different kettle of fish in the US.
Definitely is. And it even goes beyond that. The laws of each state are so different from one another. When it comes to technical standards, they're quite similar, but the actual laws, which are in many ways derived from brick and mortar laws, make things incredibly restrictive. And I'm not going to say that is a bad thing. I mean, if you have enough capital and you have the will and the way, you can make it here. But you have to be prepared for challenges on a state-by-state basis. If you think you can go in with, your 100 slot titles into all three, major iGaming states at the moment, unfettered, get them certified by your, your general laboratory, whether that be, GLI or BMM or otherwise, you'd be sadly mistaken. New Jersey has its own laboratory, test lab, and you have to have your game certified by that test lab in order to be able to offer them in the state of New Jersey. Whereas Pennsylvania and Michigan will allow for third-party laboratory testing that they have to verify thereafter. But on top of that, you have this complex set of laws which dictate such things as odds payout. Pennsylvania and Michigan offer limited odds payouts, much more limited than that which exists in New Jersey. Side bets, for example, on table games in Pennsylvania are massively restricted. They almost don't exist. The only ones that do exist are codified into law. So you're left in a state where, one thing I didn't mention is taxation. You want to go to Pennsylvania with those slots, is you're going to be charged 54% tax on those slots.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So all of this makes for basically an economy, or an iGaming economy, which is incredibly, I could say fragmented, but it's just so different from one place to the other that you have to have a very precise strategy as to how you're going to get over those hurdles.
Yeah, for sure. Really interesting, and I'm mindful that we're coming to the end of our session together, Jonathan, but there's one other topic I really wanted to talk to you about today, which is kind of the cross-sell opportunity and how Playtech can help from that perspective. There's a lot of operators, as we've discussed, putting a lot of money into online sports betting, but they'll all tell you, iGaming is the product with the best margins. That's where the profit comes from, effectively. You've got a range of different competitors at the moment, whether it be DraftKings and FanDuel from that kind of DFS background. You've got the European guys coming in, and then you've got the massive land-based casino giants like BetMGM, obviously. How can they sort of capitalize on their own USPs to sort of facilitate that cross-sell, and where does Playtech stand on cross-selling players from sports betting to iGaming and vice versa, I suppose?
So, I mean, you mentioned basically those with intrinsic presences here that I would facilitate themselves in the way of brick and mortar casinos, chains across the US. You mentioned MGM. There are many others. Penn National, Caesars, and so on. And then I would divide kind of the operators here into those two categories with outliers, of course. You've got those with an endemic presence, and then you've got those with the endemic presence in the form of having a prior DFS operation, which still exists, obviously, for a number of reasons. Both have the advantage of being able to cross-sell on that user base that they built up through their brick-and-mortar loyalty rewards programs or through their DFS spending pre-PASPA. Those companies are best positioned to capitalize upon their user bases, and I would say more so those that have a long-standing profitable user base, such as the land-based brick and mortar chains,
Yeah.
are even better positioned. They have casino players, born and bred casino players. They have a large database of them. They already profit and generate, quite significant profits on those players. Those are the best for cross-sell, and being able to convert into a profitable iGaming operation. You'll see FanDuel and DraftKings dominating the market, absolutely, along with MGM, also to a great extent. And yes, they've capitalized on their sports betting or on their sports-focused user base. The cross-sell is probably the hardest thing at the end of the day. We talk a lot about cross-selling sports bettors into iGaming, but we don't do so much on the other side of things, iGaming into sports betting. It's a much harder cross-sell. Sports betting can be, I would say, imposing. It can be a little bit, something that your regular slots player would feel a little bit threatened by in terms of, what do the odds mean? What am I even getting into here? Do I understand sports?
Yeah.
They're almost two different types of players, but where we see the most significant cross-sell is between sports bettors and table games players. Table games players tend to view themselves as more shrewd, more calculated.
And that fits with sports where you think you have an edge over the house.
Exactly. And where we tend to capitalize that, particularly overseas, and where we're going to be doing it here as well, we're already live and active in all 3 iGaming states, and very soon more states than that, also with sports betting in our platform. But what we'll copy from overseas is having these cross-sell experiences between sports betting and our live dealer games. Now, live dealer by nature, again, it's mainly all table games, and if you build into that iGaming or table game experience with the live dealer, when you build in such assets such as streams, statistics, tickers with the lines or odds going across the screen, but even more so, you embed things like bet slips for the sports book. So let's take an example of Cheltenham in the UK that happened recently.
Of course.
We launched with William Hill a dedicated Cheltenham live dealer experience, and you can see what's happening in the races, who the winners are, and with the races going off one after the other in such quick succession. You don't really want to miss out on the races, but you might want to, in between, be spinning the roulette wheel or playing a hand of blackjack. Well, if you can build that and educate the American gambler on that type of experience, you can really capture that demographic or that specific segment that is interested in both table games and sports betting, not lose one to the other vertical, and have them playing all of their games in one place. That is key to capturing that demographic here. I'll hand it to you. There's also the reverse, converting sports bettors into iGaming players, whether it be slots or table games, but we can have probably another few sessions on that if need be.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're right. We could talk about this for a long time, but you've hit the nail on the head already. The key is about entertaining the customer and sort of cutting those gaps out between entertainment experiences. And if, in between table games or in between sports betting events, if you can cross-sell the customer into the other, then, that works perfectly for the operator and the end customer, I suppose. But a great summation there, Jonathan, and thank you very much for joining me. That was a really interesting chat.
Appreciate your time, and I look forward to speaking again, Jake.
Great, thanks.